at creating little apps, like a module or something, for DNN, and doing this in an agile, rapid, easy way, which is fun, which is great for the customer, and which is flexible so that when future problems arise, you can actually just solve everything. So thanks to the sponsors, of course, because without these, such an event would not be possible. Now, my goal for you is to save you or make you a lot of money. So basically the idea is, I would even place a bet for a beer or whatever, that if we meet next time and you do even a third of the stuff I will show you today, that you're going to save thousands of dollars simply because your workflow will be easier, because you'll be faster in producing something, and because everything will be much, much more agile the way you and your customers want it. And I think one important thing not to forget as well is this. We are moving into a time where the server itself is becoming less and less important, and where you can hire people with JavaScript skills, for example, when you used to have to hire .NET people. And I think that's a really important thing as we're moving forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some fairly simple agile topics. Then we're going to create a small app in 3 iterations. We're also going to look at some issues with alternatives like purchasing a module or developing it in the standard DNN way. And then we're going to create an app mashup where we're going to merge certain apps without having to enhance an app just for adding features. Then in the next step, we're going to go Angular. So the first part is still, let's say, simple server-side templating. But of course, we want to go beyond that because our customers expect things to be fast and cool, and page reloads are just not that anymore. First, we're going to create a single-page application without writing any server code whatsoever, but using data. And then we're going to enhance on that using REST endpoints and things like that. And then we're going to look at some scenarios, because everybody's always worried, if I start with this tool and then I get to a point where this tool doesn't do everything anymore, can I grow beyond that? And that's what we're going to look at. So who am I, by the way? I grew up in the jungle of Indonesia. So that's my childhood, and this was actually still in Papua New Guinea. My parents were missionaries there, and we had computers for Bible translation. And so we would get these truck batteries, we would put them on a motorboat, they would send it to a city, charge them up, bring the truck batteries back, we would hook our computer to it, and then I wanted to make computer games, so I started programming when I was a little kid in the middle of the jungle. So in between killing pigs and having malaria, I learned programming. And that's my background. I came to Switzerland when I was 17. I don't have any real education that's worth naming. But I found it too sick in 1999, so I just learned some German and got started. And this is my team today. And we're experts on DNN, SharePoint, and a lot of JavaScript stuff. So DNN and SharePoint is about 50-50 in terms of revenue in our company. And we're full service stack, so from consulting to implementation, infrastructure, design, everything. So let's look at some agile things. And I'm not going to go into the Scrum topics you guys probably usually focus on. I'm going to look at something very, very different. When we look at specs with customers, there's usually 2 kinds of specs. One spec is to protect the developer, that he can always say, I wrote it down this way, I'm not going to do anything else without charging more. That's a very common way of making specs. But it's not very customer friendly, and the customer doesn't understand it. The more detailed you write it, the less he actually knows what you actually just agreed to. And so what we actually like doing is we like doing almost all specs in mock-ups, because this is something customers understand. If I show a customer this and I say, okay, here we have this and this issue, and there this is going to be a problem, and because of this and this connection, you can't just click there because something's missing. This is something the customer can talk about. And he can also forward it internally. And we've been very, very successful with this. This is an example of Ricardo. This is like eBay in Switzerland. We do all their content management stuff. And so this was a platform for expert consulting regarding various car models with data integration. And it was about a 40-day project. But 80% of the specs were mock-ups. And this works very well. So let's look at a very simple news app. We're going to start with this because if I start with something complex, then we're probably going too fast. So let's make some simple mock-ups, discuss them with the customer, say what we actually want. The nice thing, by the way, is our customer is usually not the person that makes decisions or that releases budgets. But he can use the sketches and go to his boss and say, this is what we're planning to do, and he can explain it. And the customer will say, okay, no problem. So based on that, we usually continue and then do Photoshop design. So this may be a bit different. I know a lot of people in the DNN community tend to pick a component first and then hope that it works for the customer. And that's not usually our approach. Usually we say, what does the customer really need? What do his customers need? What is the decision process that his customers go through when they want to maybe buy something? And based on that, we make what's supposed to happen. So we don't start with a solution and try to fit it to the customer. We ask ourselves exclusively, what does the customer really need, and build on that. Also, a great thing of going pictures first, again, is the customer can give us very qualified feedback if this will work for him or not. So building on that, I mean, now we know what it's supposed to look like. We got the HTML guy to convert it, right? So it's all very easy, right? I mean, now we just need to add some DNN, right? No big deal. In reality, it is a fairly big deal. Because a module, the way we usually do it in DNN, is a very complex thing. It needs to be import and exportable. We want to be able to transfer it from staging to live. We want to add input dialogues. Now, the customer should be able to add pictures, but he shouldn't mess it up too much. Then there's the data model, which has a lot of little things. Sometimes we want the customer to add a piece of information to this module. And other places, we want an extract of all the data that was added in other modules. For example, we may have a central location for all the news, but we may want to show the news which is related to product A again on that page. So there's all these kinds of ways data can be linked up. There's all these kind of things, and once we make a module, there may be some cases where on each portal we may want to customize the output a little bit. So doing that, providing that, needs some kind of a templating engine, and people like making their own, and things get complicated and messy, etc. So it's actually not so easy as it would look at first step, but it's actually not even done then, because we need settings management, and by the time we get that out, the customer will say, oh, I'm going to move that. I need another site for China, so I have language issues. I may have direction issues. I have a lot of things that can happen. And this is not something you can just do in a few minutes. Because basically the developer approach is, let's just make it ourselves, right? DNN has a template. Let's unpack that, get going. But to provide everything I just showed you takes at least a few hours to do, even for a pro. And very often, later on, it'll bite you in the butt. It'll come back. Something didn't work. You'll have to debug it, etc. That's for a pro. If you take like your novice programmer or even an HTML guy, they will basically not be able to provide anything production grade. And the cost-value ratio is absurd. Just for a news app, nobody's going to pay you 2 days' work. Let's look at the other alternative. Let's buy a module for $20, $50. It doesn't matter. Just researching it is going to cost you way more than what the module costs. And every time you hit a point where the module doesn't deliver, the cost is going to go up factor 10. And usually after about 2 months into the project, you'll say, we've invested factor 10. We now have to start from scratch because it's not going to work. And that happens all the time. So it sounds cheap at first. In real life, it always bites you unless you're going the strategy where you just say, I just take this component, and this is all I'm going to deliver to my customer. Then you're safe, but that's not what we're here for, right? So let's actually do it ourselves in 5 minutes. We're going to go ahead and start. So Rafa is going to be doing the work. This frees me up to just talk a little bit. And what we're going to go to is we have the HTML files prepared, and we have some pictures. And because let's say the web designer, I'm getting some, I'll better stay over here, I guess. Okay, so we have some HTML, and we're now going to go to a DNN website, which has been installed. This is like the customer's layout, and now we're going to add a TooSexy app. Now, I'm going to explain a little bit more what this even is after we did the demo, because it's always more interesting to actually see something happen. When you install it, it asks you whether you just want to install some default apps which already work, like a blog and things like that. But we're going to start from scratch, so we're just going to create a new one. And we're going to call it News, I guess. So this is like I just created a module. And in here, I have a lot of things that I can do. And we will now just, you can keep going, just create a content type. So again, nothing exotic. This is a piece of news. We have a title. We have a teaser. We have, I'll just slow down with moderating here. And we wrote down exactly the names we would like to use for everything. One slide up. Title, date, teaser, details, and image. And of course, these things have different data types, different formats. A teaser should be a word editor style interface. And an image, of course, should be a reference to a file. Because, of course, the image, too, should not, you shouldn't lose any time. The customer should just be able to drag in a picture that's large and rely on it that the system takes care of everything. Okay, so this is the content item, or the content type that we just created. And we're going to define a template now, which is more or less a view. And this is where we're going to put the HTML with the placeholders to say what it's supposed to look like. We're telling the system what type of content it is going to expect. That helps it help us provide the right placeholders when we're working on the template later on. So we're going to choose this app we just created now, and it has one view, and it's not going to show a whole lot because there's no data in it yet. And this is the initial template, and now we're going to just copy this list thing into it. So this is the HTML the web designer made. And it doesn't have any placeholders yet, so if we save it and look at it at the moment, then it's not really going to, it should be okay. Maybe you want to add a piece of data so that preview goes away. And an important concept in 2Sexy is that we often provide one content item which has demo data, so that whenever people would insert an app on a specific page, it always looks right. It always looks the way it will look when somebody added information. So we're just creating some demo stuff, and we'll drag in a picture here of, let's take the panda or whatever. And save it, and we're now going to tell the view that this would be the demo item that we want to use. So this means if there's no data entered yet, this is the one we're always going to show. Now, of course, we don't see it yet because it doesn't have placeholders yet. This is just the HTML we got from the web designer. So we're going to continue now in the template in here, and we're going to start adding the placeholders. Maybe just do it for one first of all, without the repeater. So here where we had the news title, we're just going to insert the title from the content type. Here we have a date. For that, we're going to insert the date, and there's all these snippets which assist you in doing it. This is very standard C#, but everybody always forgets how to format a date or how to do these little basic things. So whenever we realize, oh, this takes me too long to research every time, we enhance snippets. And the snippets are intelligent, so they know that a date has different snippets than a relationship to a different piece of information, for example, which needs different kind of snippets to loop through the relationships and things like that. Or an image which may want to have resize parameters. What you see here as well is we're going to add the placeholder for the image. And in reality, it already has a resizer built in. That's part of 2Sexy. Just add some parameters, and the pictures get cropped and resized to whatever you want in the template. This allows full control for the web designer and makes it easy for the end user to create good-looking content without even thinking. So this should have just worked. So just adding the placeholders, we now have one piece of information. Now let's go to the list settings and turn it into a list. So right now, it's just one piece. Now this is great for a lot of content cases that we have. Person here, just picture right, text to the left. A lot of the content is built this way. And now we're going to turn it into a list. And that just tells the system that it's allowed to add plus buttons, for example. So if we're in here, let's enable the toolbar, by the way. We don't have the toolbar yet. The toolbar is just an automatic thing to provide, if you're logged in with edit permissions, hovering edit functionality. So you can hover over this. Now we can click on edit or plus. In our case, we're going to go to plus. We're going to add another piece of news. And another picture. Okay, and now the only thing that's missing is it's not looping yet. Our template needs to know that as well. So we're going to do that now, a repeater. And you're going to have to reload the page because this system doesn't know yet that it's a list. We just set this after opening the dialog. So if we reload it, it'll now know that it's a list. And it'll provide us with listing snippets, for example, like this for each loop, which we will just simply use again. Basically what it does is it says we have data coming in on a stream called default. We can have multiple streams coming in, and we just want to loop over this. So if everything works now, we should now see 2 items. Almost. It's because we're using the variable content. Yeah, try that. Could work. There we go. So, fairly simple. And you see this took us about 5 minutes. And whether you can also start first doing the placeholders and then adding the HTML later on, but it's much, much faster than compiling, restarting, trying, compiling, restarting, trying, tweaking, compiling, restarting, trying, tweaking, compiling, adding a field, extending the data model in the entity framework, recompiling, testing, etc. So that was the first step. Let's look at the presentation and go to the next moment. Let's see, we're not seeing this right now. And it's simple enough that a person with HTML, JavaScript skills will understand this. We don't need a programmer for that. So let's look at the details view again. Let's make some sketches, discuss it with the customer. At the end, they will probably decide that they want it a little bit different. Then we'll go to Photoshop, and then we'll continue and do this 2 in 5 minutes. And as always, it should be Google optimized, so the URL must be nice. Okay? So let's do that. What we're going to do first of all is we're going to extend the content item with a field for the URL. So there's a lot of people that think that the address is something that should always happen automatically. But we always experience it that it should happen automatically, but our customers very often want to modify it a little bit for whatever reason. And we all know it shouldn't have special characters, etc. So now we're going to go into it. We're going to maybe click on it and tell it to. We're going to go into the settings of this field and say that it should use the title field to automatically build the URL. So we're going to save that. And this is just instructions for the edit dialog. So we're going to have to go back and quickly edit these 2 items we just created so that it will auto-generate the URL. If I would be typing, maybe you could show that for the second one, type a little bit. It'll update that, but only the first time. Later on, it'll stay stable. So now we have a field that we can use to link with. And we're going to create a new view for the details, of course. And what we're also going to do is we're going to say it's a news entry, which allows us to have IntelliSense kind of thing again. And we're going to give it a view name in the URL. What does this mean? It basically means that TooSexy will look if the URL has one of these terms in it. And if this term is in it, it'll swap the default view for the details view. OK, so let's do that. And before we even touch the details, let's go link it up in the main system. need to refresh again because we changed the schema behind it so it can help us. And now we're going to say that the link should be, and here we have the URL field. It has to this, and we're going to use a tiny helper. Basically, this parameters thing just says it has to add this piece of information as a parameter. And instead of ID, we're going to use the term news. So this just says, go add this as a parameter to the page. It'll automatically do the DNN stuff and replace it with slashes and things like that. But this is just a shorthand. You could also write the long API call for it if you want to. So let's insert the link here in a few places that we need. Because we wanted the picture to be linked, we wanted the image to be linked, the title, the more button. Let's click on that. And we should now have gone to /news/a demo news entry. And of course, again, it just shows the default text right now. But we've already created a second view. We've created SEO Google compatible links. We've created everything we basically need. And just so that the presentation wouldn't take too long, we've already inserted the placeholders into the details template just to save us some time. And as you see, this is all just standard C#. You could do all this with very normal know-how. Okay, so we now have this one. But of course, how does it know which item to pick up? Right now, it probably, let's try it, probably will show the same item for every click that we do. So whether we click on the first one or the second one, it'll always show the same one. Now let's change that. The classic way a programmer would think about it is, let's just write a few lines of code. And that is very easy to do. You can simply write some LINQ or whatever, and that will work. We have a slightly different approach for reasons you will see later on when we look at the JavaScript applications. So we're just going to create a visual query. And maybe you could give it some more test values here. The test parameters are because when we're in the query designer, it needs to kind of know what value we're testing it for. Otherwise, it could never know that the URL had a value in it. So we're going to say here, news is equal to other side. So this is just so that when we press test afterwards, we get some real data. Or let's leave this empty for right now. We'll update it in a moment. Okay? Okay, so now we created this query. And we'll explain a little bit more in a moment, but we're just going to add a data source which will filter by a value. And the module data source kind of has everything inside it that the module already does, for whatever magic reason I'm going to explain later on. So we're going to say, okay, let's pass this through the value filter. And from then on in the value filter, yep, this looks good. We'll say here, query string. So we're saying the attribute called URL has to match a certain pattern. This is all the same thing like I would write in code, except that it's configuration. And I can tell an admin he's allowed to do this without introducing a security risk, for example. So an admin is not allowed to modify Razor templates, but he's allowed, of course, to work on JavaScript. He's allowed to work on tokens, and he's allowed to do this. So this is the high security environment, and you'll see later on why this is great. So I think Rafael just did it. So at the moment, we don't have the test parameter yet. Let's run it once without the test parameter, so that you see at first we should get no content items returning. So you see, query result is nothing. It shows it as a JSON, because that's also how we're going to get it later on as JavaScript. Let's add the test parameter. We're going to copy paste that value in the URL here. There we go. Let's say this would be in the address. So let's tell it this is what we would like to test it as. We'll do another test, and now we should get one content item back, namely the one we would like to show. So this is all very simple once you have a first demos that you can just work on. And now we're going to tell the view that we just made that this is where it gets its data from, not the normal place. And this is by telling in the view, we have a data pipeline which delivers you something else than what you would get by default. And that works now. So let's try it. So here we have the panda bear. And if we click on the second one, we have the kitty cat. Very simple. And again, this can be done by a person who's good at JavaScript, HTML, web skills, not necessary. So let's continue here. So we're still just barely in time. And let me just go on here. I would like to explain a little bit what's going on in the background, because you saw the pipeline, and you probably have an idea what it's for and everything, but I just want to say a little bit more. This is the default setup. First of all, we have 100% caching of everything that we use, everything, whether it's the content item, whether it's a category, or whatever coming out of the system. Then we have one filter that makes sure that if something's not published yet, it won't be shown to an external user, but the admin should see it. Then we have another filter that says, from here on, we're only going to use stuff that was assigned to this module. And then we have the target, which shows it. And this is just the default. Now I can start messing with this just the way we did. Or, for example, if we look at this pipeline, here we have a pipeline that will come from the publishing filter, will have two different lists that it builds and delivers them in different stream names then to the target. This has feedback and categories, but you cannot see it here. Or another example, again, we have a small resolution issue here. This one is a SQL data source. You can add some SQL. Out will come content items based on whatever is in your SQL table. It's very simple. And it has everything in it that will protect you against insert statements, that will protect you against SQL inject, everything. So very easy to wire up, even for existing data that you already have somewhere. There's even for, heaven forbid, form and list fans. There's a data source that you could reuse that data without actually moving it. It's all there. And what's important to understand is all these pipeline parts, all these components have certain configuration options where you can use tokens to say what it should do, including fallback. Like if this value, if a sort parameter is given, then use that for sorting. Otherwise, default to descending. Or if it is given, then use that. Otherwise, use the global setting. Otherwise, use ascending. And all that kind of stuff. So that makes it very easy to configure a query without, I mean, let's be honest, most of us have a lot of trouble writing LINQ. The moment we start mapping up stuff, things get a little messy there. And if you want to create your own data source for whatever other purpose you have, it's very easy. There's also, by the way, really powerful caching concepts behind it. So it's really worth looking at. But now, let's go to the next iteration, because this is the very normal real-life scenario. We have something that works. It's just what we talked about. But the customer always assumed that a gallery is always not a big deal, right? That's just a standard thing. We don't even talk about that. But at the end of the day, he wants some function, whether it's tiles with icons on it or whatever, and he wants it in your app. I mean, you just created a cool real estate catalog. Everything works. It's maybe even JavaScript-based, whatever. And now he just quickly needs you to add a gallery. And that always is the point where you say, this is going to be a few days' work, but not anymore. So let's quickly install the Blue Imp gallery. Which means we're now going to install an app which is available in the app catalog. So instead of creating a new app like we just did, we're going to say let's just install one which already exists so that we can then merge it into the other app. Wait, you're not seeing the screen. Just a moment. This is not good. Sorry about that. You missed a few clicks right now. Sorry for that. We'll just, and I think you installed the wrong one anyways. Which is not a problem. Apps installed per portal and not on the total system. So each portal could have the same app again, can be modified in a way that doesn't affect the other portals. And now we accidentally installed the wrong app, but this is not like a DNN module which restarts the application, which we pray that it'll still run after installing, and which after uninstalling we pray to two gods to make sure that it still works. This is just something that is per portal, just a few files lying there. It's very low key. You can leave that in. We're just going to install Okay, he's going to remove it now. But as you see, it's not a big deal. It doesn't feel like this heavyweight module process that we're used to. So let's import, go to news, I believe. There we have the blue imp, yes. And this app package contains all the stuff we just did. I mean, everything we did right now we can export with one mouse click. So the gallery is the same thing. We built this somewhere, we exported it, put it on the catalog, etc. And because we already did a test run, it detects that some files already exist, but that's okay. So let's add it on this page. And as you'll see, this is just a pretty standard gallery. But again, it would take you a few hours to get it right. And what's really nice is you have pictures, but you also have some metadata. So let's quickly, this is demo data again. So let's scroll up and quickly fill in something ourselves just so we saw how this works. And now we're going to drop a few files in. Let's drop them in again just for fun, because we can. So now we have 4 pictures in this wonderful gallery. We can also give them metadata. So this again is a content type, which you can configure yourself, and you can say folders have this kind of metadata, pictures have this kind of metadata, and again you can then use it in your template to create nice looking things. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, perfect. Let's save that. And now we have a wonderful gallery. But now our customer wants us to put this inside our other app, which we just created. So let's do that. The way this works is every app or every piece of content can refer to other content blocks. And for that, we must first change something here. Let's go to the content type. One back to the field definition. And we're going to create a field that will manage all the related content that we're mapping to. So this is already a fairly advanced scenario, but mashups like this are also an advanced scenario. So we just added this. Now, the user will not see this in the normal user interface, so we're just going to click on a details page. Let's take the second one. So we're just going to reload this now. And now we were going to say that after the news, as we just created it at the bottom, we would like to provide the ability to create as many apps and whatever again as we need. And this is simple. So just to show, this is the HTML raw. This says here's where the content comes in we just created. And now we're going to have this block. It's a div where something loops across these inner content blocks and we'll render them. That's all we need to do. That's it. So let's save that. Go back to the details page. And now when we move our mouse around here, we have a new toolbar that pops up to insert new content blocks for whatever. So we can just go there, say let's insert an app. And this is now part of this details page, not part of the list page or something. This is now in here. And for example, in a blog, it may be that you even just use this to design your stuff with the picture to the right, picture to the left, responsive content, etc. Let's add the gallery. And choose the view. Or you could take the slider, for example. Let's try the slider for a moment, the other view. Yeah. So this can happen very quickly. The customer says, I have a cool event. I just need a slider on this page. And he doesn't know how to do it. Merging apps into a mashup is very, very easy. OK, let's skip filling this because we're a little bit under time pressure here. And let's hope that the screen switching works properly. OK, I think we were a little further down the first slide. OK, so that was it. So what I'm trying to say is, more or less, if we're working with 2Sexy, it's up to you to more or less just say what it looks like, and everything else is taken care of the system just that way. So we're saying it's just add view. But basically, what it actually solves for you is different depending on your role in a project. So if a customer asks me, well, what is this component here? I really don't tell him that because he would not understand it. If a coder asks me, I'm telling him it's a Razor host because that helps him understand what he can do with it. But for JavaScript guys, they have other needs, so I don't tell them that it's a Razor host. They don't need to understand that. And for really technical guys, it's actually not even a CMS, it's actually a CMF, but most people are not aware of the difference. And if we look back at this, I think what a lot of people don't understand is that MVC actually just means that we separate the view from the data delivery. That's all it is, actually. There's a lot of people that think MVC has something to do with a three-tier stack, like view, business layer, data layer. And that's not the case. MVC is exclusively the view layer. So actually all we have is we have a view that says what this stuff should look like, and we have some data that's coming from somewhere, and we have some little piece of software that connects it. But it's usually almost the identical code for everything we do. And this takes care of wasting your time. Plus, of course, some things like the data management, versioning, multi-language features, which we haven't looked at, the Atom, drag and drop, upload stuff you just saw and all that. But that's just more syntactic sugar. This is the core thing that it's all about. And with this, you can create almost all of the trivial apps which we waste so much time with nowadays. I mean, very often, like a YouTube video, that's just an HTML snippet with a placeholder. It's nothing exotic, but getting the user to do that perfectly is really hard if he doesn't have something like this. Sliders, more or less a JavaScript library plus a JSON feed. Design tiles with icons. Everybody wants that nowadays in Bootstrap. Should look that way. Very hard to do if you don't have a template which takes care of everything for you. With Too Sexy, there's an icon picker. You can specify your own icon font. Super fast. And especially single pages, which are pretty popular right now, have the expectation that every piece just looks good and behaves properly. And you cannot deliver that if you're trying to do this the standard DNN way. But let's go a level deeper, and let's go into some AngularJS, because this is where the fun is going nowadays. So we're going to look at a mini event and registration app that we made for the Tractor Pulling Association. So there's these guys that take a tractor, and they're doing this Pimp My Tractor stuff, and then they put a big load in the back, and then they just tear it through the ground. It's an exciting hobby, apparently. I'm sure it's loud. I haven't had the opportunity to watch yet, but let's quickly look, because I think I have it running right here, so we could just have a quick peek at the live implementation. So this is it. I'm currently logged on, and good point. This is so this is the website, and in this case here, I'm logged on as a host. That's why I have admin controls. But basically, it shows me my contact data. It shows me my tractors that I've registered, because each tractor has a different weight class and everything. And of course, I can only register a tractor to an event which also supports that weight category, for example. And here I can see previous registrations that I made, and I can go in here and edit things. And for this use case here, these are all AngularJS forms, but they're on separate pages for some reasons I'll explain later on. So I can edit this, I can save this, and the setup has no server code at all. Nothing. And let's look at how that is done. I hope the screen switching works again. Okay, here we are. So the mission, the customer needed an event management system, of course. It's an association, so they don't have a lot of money. We all know that. So in total, the customer had 3 days budget for this, and it had to go live in 2 weeks. And I mean, he also needs all these tiny little things, which are just basically impossible to deliver in 3 days if you would start from scratch. And of course, it has to be multi-language. And what we're doing here is we're calling it open heart surgery because we're just going for it, creating a quick draft, trying it, showing it to the customer, saying, okay, let's correct these 2, 3 things, and then we're done. Because the standard, let's write down some specifications and do a review, blah, 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 just doesn't work. Okay, there's a data model with related data, and yeah, just had to go really quickly. Now, the quick live demo we just did, and in reality, it's already getting fairly complex, right? So we have Angular, we have Bootstrap, we have Formly. Formly is a form generator framework for Angular. And if we're completely honest, building those kind of things is already fairly challenging. It takes some time, right? And then you need some gulp processes to compress everything, to merge everything. We're going to do a session about that tomorrow. It has to be multi-language. The developer profile is a JavaScript guy, so we don't want to have server code. And we have permission issues because a user should only see their own data. And public users can change data, but only their own. And to do all that, and it still needs to be movable from staging to live, it needs all the data entry, etc. So this is fairly challenging. And the back end, we're going to go through this with slides to save a little bit of time, is a simple pipeline which will deliver the driver profile in one channel. It'll deliver the events that he's registered to in another stream. It'll deliver all these things, and we're just using a filter there to say, give me only the data of the current user. We also need some permissions, both on the query, which needs read permissions for anybody that can look at the module. So if a person has module view read, he should be able to read the query and get data for himself. And the content type itself, he should have the ability to create new ones. And for those that he is the author of, he should be able to edit them. Configuration only. And if we're looking at this on the wire, again, you just see this is some very simple HTTP calls. The first one is to get the query, goes through a URL called app query. The other one is to update his profile to do something. It's all very straightforward. And the Angular code is also very simple. I mean, basically, this is just an HTTP call, right? Anybody could write this. But to make things even easier, we provide an Angular API already for a service called content and query. And then you can just do something like return query or content vehicle.update with the new data. So very, very efficient to get things going this way. And now let's go even more difficult. Now we're going to go into the realms of the things which 2Sexy doesn't do today. Because we always hit that point, right? I mean, this, for everybody, it's obvious that with 1 million records, this would probably not scale anymore. Or maybe we're going to hit a point where we have to integrate an other back-end system. We have to integrate a SOAP API of whatever. And then we know it's not going to scale anymore. So what do we do then? In this case, we have a showcase Angular SPA application, which has a list of things. You can click on it. You see the details. And I think we could take a short peek. Again, the presentation is still running here. Could you quickly show it? So this is a normal website. Here he has his showcase customers. This is an Angular app. It also has in-screen editing and all that through the Angular. But you can click on something, and this is a search engine optimized app, by the way. That's something we're going to look at tomorrow, how to create JavaScript-based content which Google can index. And so this is fairly simple, but there's one thing which 2Sexy cannot do. In the current implementation, it is not able to deliver you the files that the user dragged in for a related item. So for that, this is just a very simple example where you're doing something and you're thinking, wow, everything must be very easy, and you hit a point where you realize it's not quite that easy anymore. And of course, everybody has this, no matter what system we work with. And our philosophy is that 2Sexy gives you a nice 80% solution, which does everything you need for all the basics. But for everything else, you still need to solve it in JavaScript or in Razor or in whatever you prefer. So let's quickly look at the web API. Yep. So in 2Sexy, you can also provide web API. So that's just simple C# web APIs. And this is what we had to write to compensate for this problem. In other words, this is just the Sexy API controller is the same thing as the DNN API controller, just with some added objects like the app object or something. And this is all it does. It's just a GET call which says, I allow anonymous access. It does something with data and delivers it at JSON. So this is your standard technologies. And that's the way 2Sexy works. It doesn't try to make you do anything in an exotic way. It just tries to make all these things you do 100 times easier. But this is still C#. This is the stuff you guys are all doing every day. And that's how it works. Okay. So I think we're almost there. So the special was that we had multiple assets per content item, and for that we don't have a JS API yet. The indexing through Google, that's nothing 2Sexy will do for you. That's your job as a JavaScript developer. So that's the session tomorrow. Automation things like gulping up everything and putting it into one package, again, session tomorrow. But multi-language relationships and that is all inside. So we wrote this, might take you 30 minutes. Of course, it's just 2 lines of code. If you're a little practiced, it won't take you as much. But it's just to show that you can always continue with all the stuff you already know without running into something. And that's our philosophy. We're helping you getting things done, but we're staying out of the way. The transparent API is something you may not be aware of at the moment, but you may have felt that our loop across the items for variable in data default may have felt a little complicated. We're doing that on purpose because we want the developer to realize how his data delivery works. If we make that too simple, people will start having wrong ideas of what's happening in the background. We want to encourage best practices. That's why I also write a lot of blogs about this. And we're doing extremely loose coupling to the environment because we know that if we are too deep into DNN, we will never be able to get out anymore. And reality is DNN.core or whatever will not have the same API as we have today. It's impossible. The only way we can make sure that our apps can migrate is by not relying on that API. There's questions about providing 2Sexy for nopecommerce. It's possible because we're not very deep into the API. The connection layer is fairly thin. But the core goal right now is surviving DNN 7 or 8 change to the core future. And for everything else, you still have to learn C# and JavaScript. We're not going to be able to take that away from you. And the core value is let's get this all to be fun. Focus on real-life people roles. So we're really saying the content editor is usually not a web designer. And the web designer doesn't want to waste time editing content and helping the guy insert a YouTube video. Do as little as possible. Stay out of the way. And there's some things that we're really focused on. For example, we knew that the WYSIWYG editor, previously Telerik, nowadays the CK, etc., is a really big problem. But we actually delayed solving it because we knew that without automatic file upload and file management, if we don't have that, then the editor must provide it, which causes new problems. So that's why we had to make sure we have the file delivery first. And as you saw, drag a file in that works on the Word editor as well. Don't worry about anything. So this is just an enabler. And this may be a bit weird, but we think, you'll also see that in the Gulp session tomorrow, that every tool that is so slim in what it does that you could replace it with something else is the tool that you're going to want to use. Because everything you know I can still get out of because it just uses Razor or just uses JavaScript. I mean, the stuff you saw now, you can also do in other ways. It'll just take you more time. But you're not locked into this just because of that. You can always get out again. And that's just the way we want to work because we too know that maybe in 10 years' time, life is going to be different and we were going to curse ourselves for doing something badly this time. And that's why we're trying to keep things as narrow as possible. So, do you have questions? Yes?
How is the data stored?
The data stored is in an EAV, an entity attribute value concept. So it's more or less an over-normalized table. Yes?
When you have more complex relationships between tables, is it still the AAV model, or do you create your table more with the traditional relation way?
No, it's
when
still...
you have relations between factors and categories and things like that, you keep the basic EAV model?
Yep. Yep.
And it works fast enough?
Absolutely no problem. We've tested with like 10, 20,000 records, kind of, 20,000 content items, no problem. Yes?
Is it possible to import or export data?
Yes. Yes. The format itself is actually, let's say, a little bit specialized, but you can go to a content type, export an empty table, then copy paste in Excel and re-import it, and you're fine. Yeah. So it's built. It's a special XML we built just so that you can edit it in Excel afterwards. Yeah. Yes.
What about multilingual text fields?
Can you say that again?
What about multilingual text fields?
Multi-language. Every field in the system is multi-language. Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry about that. The question was, what about multi-language text fields? And every field in the system is multi-language. I think we may have a minute to be able to show that. EBTech, for example. Because we're from Switzerland. So that's basically one of our core problems all the time. We have 4 languages that we have to cater to plus English. And so this is very standard that almost, I would say, 50% of our customers are multi-language. And again, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the right solution for this is. And the programmer tends to do a lot of things, assuming a lot of things. And we felt that is the wrong approach. So the way we're doing it is we have this content item right here, which has the German language. And if we switch over to English, then each field is optionally translatable. So in this case, you can easily see which fields have been translated for this language and which ones are not. And this has a lot of very important implications. People that don't create multi-language websites do not understand that the first filling of the content is not the problem. That's the easy part. The problem is lifecycle. The problem is when the pack shot is updated in one language and it's forgotten in the other language. The problem is that when Spanish and Portuguese should have the same pack shot, but German and Austrian and Swiss should have a different pack shot, and they should still be linked so that when you change that information, it's always on all together. So this has a fairly complex model where you can link languages together and say these are connected, this is read-only, this one is editable, things like that. But it's very simple, and it's all made so that the editor can make the choices. Does that answer the question? Okay. More questions?
I have a question about your apps. You said it's a catalog.
Yep.
Is it your intentions someday to make a store for apps?
At the moment, no. Of course, there may come a day. We've been thinking if people would be able to sell an app there, that maybe other developers would also enjoy publishing more of their work. So there may be a case in that. But we believe that most of these apps are very important that people even learn how to solve things, because you need to see how things are done to understand it. You have to take apart Peter Donker's clock to find out how it works. And so at the moment, no, not at all, because we think this is what's necessary for making the product popular. More questions? Okay. If you have anything else, let me just have 2 or 3 final slides before we finish off here. So this is how you can get started. Basically, install 2Sexy, and before you create your first app, please try the content parts first. Let me quickly show you how this actually works. Again, we have a slide issue. Because whenever you add a new portal, and you're going to add a module here, then of course it's still completely empty. And now it's going to ask you whether you would like to auto-configure the content. Now, especially if you're getting started, this is the right way to go. And in about 2 weeks, we're just about to finish all the Bootstrap content templates with image right, image left, 3 in a column, blah, 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 blah. And if you press this, it'll just install the default package. If you're a designer and you've wanted to create your own package, you will skip this step and install your own. But this is very easy. And I really recommend do this first, because it helps you understand the philosophy that we're trying to give about the end user using this, and not thinking in terms of tables and data, but thinking in terms of the page he's working on right now. And it's a different feeling. And once you've done that, you can then install the, or move in the app component. And if you scroll down a bit, you will see that it already offers you a bunch of apps that it will just pre-install for you. These are just some of the more popular ones from the catalog, like the blog, the Blue Imp Gallery you just saw today, and Image Compare, etc. Just press install. It'll just throw them all on your system. Give it a try. Look at these just to get a feeling for it. And this will help you understand that so many things are very, very easy if you can see them this way. And then, from then on, try to change them and build upon that. And the apps we just talked about today, we're going to publish them too. And thank you for watching, and please contribute.